Welcome to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif on Rogers TV Barrie. And this week, Mike, we're talking trivia. So are you ready to have your skills tested and your knowledge tested?
Yes, let's go at it and see what we can figure out here. We've got quite a list of things. I think we did a little bit of research over the weekend and come up with some pretty good questions and some interesting answers for sure. So let's get right into it, shall we?
Absolutely. I think some of these things will come as a surprise. Some of them maybe not so much, but certainly if you watch social media, or if you participate in any of the general conversations, certainly around budget time and tax time, or when you see all the signs going up on the side of the road, a lot of questions, a lot of conversations are had. And I think this could be a little bit of fun, Mike. So if you were to put on your hat as a realtor, and I know you get a lot of data thrown at you, a lot of metrics, a lot of reports that you're reading and publishing yourself on some of your own blogs. But when you think of the least expensive place in the entire province of Ontario is what we're going to focus on. What do you think of in terms of real estate, places to buy a home, least expensive, Mike?
Well, my mind drifts to like someplace like, South Porcupine or Tobermory. But I think for the sake of the question and the answers that we were able to research, it was specifically cities they were talking about. Yeah. So there may be cheaper regions than these, but in terms of cities, what I was surprised to find out, because I probably wouldn't have guessed it right, but the most or the least expensive city in Ontario to buy a home over this winter, at least when this data was gathered, was North Bay, Ontario, with an average price for a 3-bedroom detached home of $290,000.
So blessings to all of our friends and viewers who live in North Bay. But when you say the data was collected over the winter, when I think of North Bay and I think of winter, I think that that's probably a very fair answer to come up with.
There's sometimes reason for the numbers, yeah. And the next least expensive place on this study was Sudbury at $298,000, close to North Bay, and then Windsor was behind that at $390,000. I think Windsor, it's a little more south, it's a bigger city, but they've suffered tremendously over the years with the loss of a lot of auto-related jobs. Barrie sits at number 6 on the average price scale, and our prices are around $600,000 average at the moment. And the most expensive is Oakville, Ontario, at $1.3 million average price for a detached home. Toronto sits. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, not so surprising in what you've come back with. I mean, North Bay, by the way, though, if you look at North Bay and Sudbury, they certainly have universities up there. They've got government positions up there. I think it's important when we talk about expensive place to buy a home, you're quite right. First of all, we're talking about, certainly population centers of about 100,000. But we're also talking about what are the it's based on supply and demand, right? What is the drawing card that would create a rush or a demand and therefore increase the price?
And what also ties into that is the caliber of homes. Like when you look at Oakville being the highest priced, Oakville has some pretty elaborate homes and form part of the answer to a question that's coming up on here. And then Toronto, again, is they're just over $1 million average price right now. Highest price listing in Canada. Where do you think that might be? I think we gave the answer away already.
I think you kind of alluded to it, and it's funny, Mike. I remember driving down along the waterfront, along sort of almost like Lakeshore Drive extension into Oakville, and it's a very scenic drive. It's kind of like if you go the other direction, is it Highway 2 or 12 out towards Pickering and whatever. There's again, it's just all follows along Lake Ontario, and I just happened to cross this. I don't know.
Palatial?
How to describe it? It's something you would anticipate either seeing in Europe or in Beverly Hills, for example.
Yes.
In Brentwood, Beverly Hills, and it was just. And it was in Oakville, Mike. That's the short answer. It was in Oakville. Yeah. And it was just massive, but it was ornate.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And yeah, it's definitely period design. And the house we're talking about is named Chester Hall, after the golden retriever of the owner, who was the former president of Labatt's Brewery. It's a 38,000 square foot home, but surprisingly only 6 bedroom, but it has a helipad, a bowling alley, theater, wine cellar, son, all the things you'd expect in a $38,000, $50 million property. I wouldn't want to have to dust or vacuum if that was my home, but to each their own, I suppose.
The guy dusting or
that's exactly the only way I would get through the doors, I would think. Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't be enjoying the hors d'oeuvres at the cocktail party. I'd be serving them. Yes.
Yeah.
City with the highest property taxes. And this was a last minute ad. We went through all of this. And just before we started, you said, that's important. That's something people want to know about. So what is the city in Ontario with the highest property taxes? Let's say top 3. What would you guess, Arif?
With the highest, again, interestingly enough, and if you think about it, Mike, some names are going to keep coming up here, but Windsor.
Yeah.
Windsor is the city with the highest property taxes. Thunder Bay is a close second. And I was surprised, Mike. Well, not surprised. I didn't know, but Sault Ste. Marie rounded up 3 there in highest. But when we look at the city of Barrie, and I think this is why this was so important, just because we're in close proximity to the GTA, or it's a nearby city, people oftentimes will say, you know what, we pay the highest taxes in all of Ontario.
Yeah. Well, anybody who lives anywhere believes they pay the highest taxes, I bet.
The truth of the matter is we're right in the middle.
Yeah.
We are city of Barrie is right in the middle of the top 44 municipalities. And, and
bless you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And I think somebody's having a nightmare or something, but I think what you have to take into consideration, what's really important for people to take into consideration is the cost to run or to service a municipality includes roads and infrastructure and all those things that we talk about, recreation facilities, transit. Some things are property tax based only. Some things have a shared percentage of user fee, like putting your token or you're paying for the bus. And then the other things are just based on the fee, like your water is just simply a water bill. But the cost of running the infrastructure is spread out over the population. So when you look at the city of Toronto, which is the cheapest city,
and there's economies of scale built into that.
It is all about economies of scale. People they say, oh, I don't want to see the city of Barrie turn out like Toronto with all the condos. Well, that's how you're going to spread the cost of running the city.
Well, when you can layer people on top of each other and charge each of them property taxes for essentially the same square footage of property of ground space, then you're finding economies there that
exactly. We're going to go to break, Mike, go real quick. And when we come back, I'm going to touch on 1 or 2 more things about property taxes, and then we'll keep going on with our trivia. But stay with us on Hitting Home with Mike and Arif.
Excellent.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Hi, I'm Lise McCourt, the president of the RVH Auxiliary. Although we can't be there in person right now, the volunteers, the people that you see in the blue vests, continue to raise funds for RVH. We've been a fundraising force for RVH for over 125 years, having raised $12 million in the past 12 years. The Auxiliary continues this work with our most recent pledge of $5 million. All proceeds go to patient care at RVH. Our jackpot draws will be held monthly with early bird prizes for each draw. In our first jackpot draw, the winner took home over $36,000. The early bird prizes include a combination of cash and gift cards supporting local businesses. The Auxiliary raises funds to help ensure that when our loved ones need care, they have the best available right here in our region. So buy your tickets early and don't miss out on your chance to win.
Welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif, and trivia is the subject today, real estate trivia. And we were talking about, just before the break, talking about taxes. And I think you had one more point to add with regards to property taxes, Arif.
Sure. Well, I mean, property taxes is always a favorite point of discussion for some. It's also a point of anxiety and frustration for others.
For sure.
The people, quite honestly, I think, want to believe that I'm getting fair value. I'm getting value for the dollars that I spend. But there is a lot that goes into the calculation. It's not arbitrary. I sometimes get frustrated when I see my former colleagues get into a debate or a competition about how can I set it at a number? How can I set a target that I'm not willing to go over in terms of income? And I think that that's often a play towards the public, to be quite honest with you. And I never looked at it that way. To me, it's if the work needs to get done and we can justify it and we can show that we're being prudent with the money being requested of the ratepayer and the taxpayer, then I think we can justify it. So, but in terms of some elements for consideration, by no means is it's exhaustive, but it's based on, as I said, the amount of money required to run the city and then divided over the number of people and their households. And there are some considerations around, footprint or square footage, et cetera, of property. But it's also, as I said, broken into some fees as well that are not part of the property tax. But the other thing is, what are the other elements or what are the services that each municipality is getting? So it's not fair necessarily to only say, apples for apples, Windsor is more expensive than Barrie in terms of property tax rate. The reason being is the city of Barrie, for example, we are in a snow belt. We have more snow. We have, typically speaking, have more snow to clear. The city also made a choice based on voter input or people's input that we want our sidewalks cleared. Not every municipality clears their sidewalks. Last time I was on council, the dollar was around $600 and something thousand a year to clear the snow just on sidewalks. But we also have to take into consideration the fact that we're on a drinking water source. And so we have a lot of money that has to go into the protection of the drinking water system. That gets added, not just the water bill, but also the functioning of the system. So there are other things that are taken into consideration. And I think if we are comparing apples to apples, there's a lot of homework to do. Yeah.
Well, there's definitely a wealth of knowledge and perspective given your background as a city councilor. So for a future show, I think we could probably fill a half hour just speaking about our tax dollars, how they're generated and where they go.
By far, I was not the wealth of knowledge. Staff is the wealth of knowledge, but it's certainly something to pick up.
You have access to that well anyways, but let's get more trivial here. Again, here's an interesting question. Do you think there are more renters or owners of the homes that people live in Canada?
You know what? That is a phenomenal question. And I'm glad you talked about in Canada, because when you look at the world, when you look at the population of the world, Canada is in a very unique position. And I've known this for years. I've learned about it. I didn't necessarily know it off the top of my head. Yes, I've been fortunate enough to travel to Europe and Asia and a few different places. And home ownership is really quite rare when you look at the global population.
It is. Yeah.
I would say, Mike, actually that there is a greater percentage of homeowners in Canada than renters, and significantly a greater percentage of homeowners in Canada compared to even our neighboring countries and other people on other continents.
Well, you would be right, with roughly 68% of us owning our homes here in Canada. And further to that, households of aged 35 or under represent about 40%. That's a higher percentage than the United States. And Canada's least affordable markets, Toronto and Vancouver, home ownership rates are almost double that of cities like Paris and Berlin. So even in our most expensive cities, the number of people who own versus rent is quite high. How about the largest privately owned property in Canada, like tract of land, lot, just property? How big do you think that largest piece of property, privately owned property, is in Canada? What would you guess? Let's go by acres.
Are we talking farms as well, though? Or
Yeah, farms, anything that's privately owned property, be it used for farming, for whatever.
It's got to be a
privately
prairie
held.
province, and in my opinion, it's got to be somewhere in a prairie province, Mike.
Yeah, you would be right. And it's in Carrot Valley, Manitoba. You should have got that. Come on. I don't know that I've heard of Carrot Valley. I can only imagine what they do in Carrot Valley, but and that property is 25,900 acres. And it was for sale last year for a price of 57 million. A little bit more than that house in Oakville, but hey, at least here you'd be able to grow carrots. So
yeah, it sounds charming. I'm picturing Peter
Rabbit. It
does.
And it's there was a picture when I was looking this up, and it's totally flat land. Like your dog could run away on Friday, and on Sunday you can watch him running away still from your front porch. So
I've driven across. I've seen that.
Yeah. Now Canada's fastest growing city. Barrie has been number one fastest growing city between 2001, 2016. We held that distinction with a growth of 2.42% per year in each of those years on average. We no longer hold that distinction, though. So what would you say is the fastest growing city at the moment here in Canada? That's
a fascinating question, and I'm going to go with some data, some research. I'm assuming it's either along a 400 corridor or something that has mass and rapid transit, like an express GO train. So I'm going to think of especially when you look at the more recent exodus from the GTA, but you also are looking at, there are some people who quite rightly say, I don't know if my kids will ever be able to afford a home. So I'm going to go, what's that favorite quote that we heard recently from a member of the Real Estate Association, something about drive until you qualify. So
yes,
I'm go with either past Milton to the west or past Pickering, Ajax. I'm going to go with somewhere around Whitby area, Mike.
Whitby's close, and you're on the right track. But continue on a little bit further, and you hit Oshawa. And surprisingly, Oshawa has the greatest growth.
I would have thought other way because of the recent GM closing, but then again, they're going back up.
It's closing, so that is a negative there. But the positive is that again, it's overlapped by that exodus that's happening out of the GTA.
Yeah.
So So and it's second, and that's at 2.1% growth. So still less growth than what we were seeing here from 01 to 16 in Barrie at 2.42. But the second fastest growing city at the moment is Halifax at 2% growth. I was there a couple of years ago. There's a lot of construction there.
I am not surprised. Halifax is beautiful. There's a lot of charm. There's a lot of opportunities. It's got centers of higher education. It's got tons of tech actually out there. And it is affordable. So,
and schools, post-secondary. Yeah. Have we got time for a couple more?
No, we're going to go to break. We're going to go to break real quick. But when we come back, we got some other questions about how to price things out. So stay with us here on Rogers TV. Barrie will be back with more trivia on Hitting Home with Mike and Arif.
Ready to move forward financially? Then you won't want to miss Money Matters with Doug Jones here on Rogers TV. It's a personal finance show focused on getting you expert advice in all matters related to.
Hey, did you know? More than 4,500 Canadians are waiting for an organ transplant right now.
Right now. 4,500.
People are dying.
And you could save a life.
90% of Canadians say they're willing to donate their organs.
But only a few are registered.
So what are you waiting for?
Get registered.
It's easy and it's free.
Leave a legacy.
Be a hero.
Save a life.
Find out how to register today. Go to kidney.ca.
Do you have something to share? Let everyone know about your next meeting, your need for volunteers, or your fundraising event on the Rogers TV Community Billboard. Send us your words and we'll bring them to life on Rogers TV and rogerstv.com. When it's time to spread the word, go to rogerstv.com to add your announcement to the community billboard.
What kind of show do you want to see on Rogers TV? What interests you? Log on to rogerstv.com, fill out a show proposal, and tell us about your segment idea. We want to know what you want to see. Rogers TV, only on Rogers.
Welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif. And this week on Hitting Home, we are talking about trivia. Trivia locally, trivia provincially, nationally, certainly as it compares to our neighbors and other countries around the world. Just our concept of what we pay for and how we live and how does it really compare, and really trying to make a little bit of sense of it all. So Mike, let's get right back into it, and let's ask this question here. Certainly between Canada and the United States, politically, we may have some differences. We may have some differences in ideologies, but if we're being fair, there are a lot of similarities between us and our good American friends and neighbors. And when we think of home ownership, though, what would you say, Mike, where is the average price of a home higher, in Canada or in the United States? And of course, be fair to the varying geographic and demographic influencers.
Yeah. And you have to, because my first thought is my brain goes to, okay, Chicago, Manhattan, Los Angeles, which I'm sure prices are quite high, even in comparison to some of our big cities, but it's a big country. And I think the average price, given that, is probably higher in Canada than it is in the US.
Mike, you would be absolutely correct. The average home price in Canada is approximately 43% higher than the average house in the United States.
Wow.
And all you have to do actually is take a look and watch some of these home and garden TV shows where they do, buy this, buy that, list that, sell that, whatever those shows are. And if you look at some of the states, and you can find some of the most incredible finds for a fraction of what you would think of purchasing them here. But some of the things that are really taken into consideration to what determines the price of the home, it includes cost of materials, it includes the ability or the builder season, and it also includes the cost of labor. And we certainly have per capita, and on a apples to apples comparison, our basic cost of labor is significantly more expensive in Canada.
I do know that our debt service ratio is a lot higher in Canada than the US. I recently read that. So I'm sure that's tied in with real estate prices as well, or values.
Absolutely. And again, you think about things like insulating, or many homes in the United States are built on a pad or slab on grade, as they say, and don't have a foundation. So and a huge portion of the cost of building a house in Canada includes the basement or the footings and the foundations.
Yeah. Well, there's a few more questions, and we'll try and do them a little more rapid fire so we can get through most of these in this segment. So is there a best time of year to buy or sell real estate?
Yeah, I'm going to go with, this is a plug for realtors. Obviously, the best time is now. And the best time now being the fact is you will never be able to predict the market. But remember this, unless you are selling high and buying low, which means you're living in a tent or you're living in someone's basement or a friend's house or something like that. If you are buying for resale or for repurchase in the same market, then it's
a wash.
It's relatively a wash unless you're adding a factor like I'm moving out of province or something along those lines.
Yeah.
There are definitely cycles. There are definitely times where it's more expensive to buy. And I do certainly when I'm dealing with my clients, especially when there's a frenzy or a panic, it's exactly the time when I advise my clients to hold their breath and count to 10 because wait for it to dip. So
theoretically, given our market and our history here over the past few years, the best time to buy is any time before right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Which has more floor space? I like this question. Which has more floor space? A 1,500 square foot bungalow with a finished basement, or a 1,500 square foot 2-story home with a finished basement?
Yeah, Mike, this is a favorite of mine, and it's one that I know my daughter, who's in university, would be coming to me and saying, I don't understand the English in this question, or I think they're trying to trick me here. And it really is. It's a fun question because when you're factoring actual square footage of a home, you're not taking into consideration certain areas like the basement or other.
It's all above grade.
So I'm gonna say if we're doing that comparison, it's definitely the bungalow that has greater floor space.
Yeah. And being that you take a 1,600 square foot bungalow, that's 800 or 1,600 square feet on one level. So there's a 1,600 square foot basement. Take
So here's
a 1,600 square foot 2-story, it's 8 and 8. So the basement's going to be 8 as well.
Yeah. So here's
a little bit of math.
You want to look at the realtors will often put on the MLS, they'll put living space as opposed to floor space. So there's a big
Here's a timely one. This just happened recently with Korea. There were some changes made. What term commonly used by realtors for as long as I've been in business and longer, and by the public to reference a specific room in the house? This term was recently changed. Do you know what that was? Probably saw this in the news.
It caught me, and I'm, listen, maybe I'm an old guy and I'm one who enjoys tradition. I didn't think too much into it. I never thought about it, but apparently there are those who have been thinking long and hard on what things need to change in our general vocabulary and what we consider commonplace. And we've seen it in sporting events. We've seen changes in all sorts of things where we're trying to create equality and equity both. They're not the same.
Political correctness. And there's extremes of it. I'm all for it, but
sorry, Mike, I talked all over you.
Yeah. I'm all for it. I just find sometimes it gets crazy. But this one here, it's not going to hurt or change my day too much and that was the term master bedroom.
Mike, we gotta go, but I'm going to throw out real quick. What is the best color if you're planning on selling a home and you want to make the most money? What is the best color for the interior walls that you should paint your home?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go right from my notes here because I didn't know this, but I would agree. And Zillow looked at 135,000 photos of old homes from across the country. They determined that gray tones are the most popular and will add $6,200 worth of value to a home. So interior gray and white tones are the most common as well.
The giveaway for our show is if you have a personal fan favorite and you fall in love with that fuchsia, don't.
And on that note, Arif, we are definitely out of time. Thank you for tuning in to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif. See you next time.